My name is Rory Schaefer-Walsh, Vice President for Institutional Advancement, and I'm your host for this evening's program. This program came to be as we began to think about what we needed to hear more than anything at this time in our nation's history, and hope came to everyone's thoughts. Hope comes in many different forms this year, and yesterday morning, hope was administered via syringe to a nurse who had been on the front lines fighting the good fight by directing nurses, organizing care, and tirelessly providing life-saving care to those affected by COVID-19. That nurse, who became the beacon of hope to the nation and the world, is Sandra Lindsay, a 1999 St. Joseph's College graduate who earned her bachelor's in nursing on our Brooklyn campus. We are proud of Sandra and exceptionally proud to call her the pandemic hero, an SJC alumna. Tonight, we turn to four sisters of St. Joseph to share their perspectives and lessons learned from 2020. Joining us this evening is Sister Suzanne Franck, a sister of St. Joseph of Brentwood for 42 years, is in her 26th year at St. Joseph's College. She presently serves as Associate Professor of Religious Studies and the Director of Academic Advising, as well as coordinating the Transfer Seminar course and the Disney College program. Sister Marie Mackey will be joining us. Sister Marie is a graduate of St. Joseph's College, Brooklyn, class of 1984. During her senior year at St. Joseph's College, she was president of the Undergraduate Association. In the early 90s, she was an adjunct in the General Studies program at the college while teaching full-time at St. Francis Prep. In 1998, Marie entered the Sisters of St. Joseph's. After professing first vows in August 2001, she went back to her alma mater, the Mary Louis Academy, and taught in the religious department there until 2016. At this time, Sister Marie is the Director of Young Adult Ministry and Vocational Discernment for the Sisters of St. Joseph's, as well as the Director of Campus Ministry at the St. Joseph College Brooklyn campus. Also joining us is Sister Helen Kearney. She served as the President of the Sisters of St. Joseph's since 2001. She is an SJC graduate from the Brooklyn campus, class of 1967. Sister Helen worked at SJC from 1969 to 2011 and was the director of the Dillon Center for 24 years, as well as an assistant professor of child study. Currently, Sister Helen is a St. Joseph's College Board of Trustees member. Sister Ann Cashin was also joining us. She has been an assistant professor in the Child Study Department since the year 2000. She serves on the Liturgy Committee for the Sisters of St. Joseph's of Brentwood, New York, and assists in the planning of seasonal celebrations for the sisters, associates, and partners in mission. Sister Mary Ann volunteers at the CSJ Garden Ministry in Brentwood. I also want to add that for Sister Suzanne Franck, she's also committee membership at the college, includes the Council for the Arts, COVID Emergency Fund, Sustainability Committee, and Curriculum Committee. She is also very excited to be a part of the Food Insecurity Committee. We just announced the opening of the Food for Thought Food Pantry, presently for students on the Long Island campus. Sisters, thank you all for being here this evening. We truly appreciate your time and insight. I'll start by asking a series of questions for the panel to answer. And if any of our guests have questions, please feel free to use the chat button to type in your questions. If we have time at the end of the evening, we will post some additional questions. Our first question to the panel is, what was your biggest challenge in 2020 and what have you learned? Let's start with Sister Helen. Sister Helen, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. When I first thought about this, I kept thinking of it globally. We heard about this outbreak in Asia, Europe, but, not the United States, of course, but it arrived on the West Coast, spread so rapidly across country. And there it was, something we didn't understand, something we really didn't have any control over. And then close to home, I attended a Board of Trustees meeting, and Don Boomgarden arrived to inform the board members that night that St. Joseph's College would be going virtual overnight. We also have our schools. Same thing happened. Within a couple of days, the decision to close. What do we do? How do we get the students online, faculty, as so many people had to do that? That was a major challenge. And in the midst of it all, Joe Lewinger, he and his wife, alum of St. Joseph's College, beloved assistant principal at Mary Louis High School, Mary Louis Academy, one of our high schools, died of COVID. Close to home, my brother entered our Maria Regina residence on Ash Wednesday and died of COVID on Easter Monday. So all of this impact just came so rapidly within a short, very, very short time. For our own congregation, the care of our sisters, lack of testing, needing supplies, these were really very practical challenges. And I think the other real challenge for us was that we had to respond so quickly, and we didn't have the certainty that we're often used to. I learned a lot through that. I learned very simply, you cannot go ahead of grace. You look at what is in front of you, and bluntly, it was because of so many people who came and worked with us, provided care, kept the congregation going. That was very close to home. And then, as we all did, watching news broadcasts, we saw this outpouring of support, selfless help and support for those who really needed the care. That grew exponentially in the country and around the globe. I think I finally learned that really what matters most is in our day-to-day living is the connections that we have with one another and a sense of community. I felt very privileged as a member of our congregation, as associated with many other groups, including St. Joseph's College. All of the outreach, all of the working together, you realize that this is really who we are meant to be. We are meant to be there for one another. And bluntly, I think that's a learning that we're going to have to carry over from this moment.
Thank you, Sister Helen. Sister Marianne? You're muted, Sister Marianne.
Sorry. You'll understand that when I tell you what my challenge was. It was to maintain meaningful contact and interaction. When all of this happened, I was in the midst of advising students, transfer students and current students for the fall semester. In my family, we were looking forward to milestone moments of first communions and confirmation and anniversary celebrations. But into this time of disruption and turmoil, there came so many opportunities for reflection and resilience, for thinking creatively and reaching out to others who shared similar concerns and who had some answers and some needed skills for this moment. At the same time, these opportunities involve facing vulnerabilities associated with taking new and sometimes uncertain steps. I found that there was a grace in doing this together. I learned that I wasn't the only one vulnerable in this new space. I was sharing in others' vulnerability as together we learned from those who were ahead of us on the path of learning, connecting, and celebrating virtually. I attended workshops for Zoom, heeding the often repeated advice, unmute yourself, share your camera. In all, I am learning how to bridge the distance and be present in new ways. I even learned how to host a Zoom meeting. My family has a Zoom call weekly. We look forward to this check-in, and we're planning a Zoom call for Christmas with our extended family. When I told my siblings that we were having this evening of hope, one of my brothers suggested a screenshot so that I could show you how we enjoy Zoom. And so Jessica is going to help me with that. So here we are, my sister, my 5 brothers, and myself. And I guess I would say, if you haven't tried Zoom as a family, we all would say it's a great way to keep connected. Thank you. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you, Sister Marianne.
Welcome.
Sister Marie.
Thank you. I think first, when I first heard this question, for me, being an extreme extrovert, the biggest challenge was the isolation. I live with 2 wonderful sisters, but we're not used to spending 24/7 together because we have lots of other things that we do. So not having the gatherings, not being able to go to the college and have the students in the student life office. So that was a personal challenge. And then connected with that was this lack of control. And where we live in Jamaica, when the lockdown went into effect, I found myself at times waking up in the morning with extreme anxiety because it was a deafening silence, and the only sounds I heard were police sirens, ambulance sirens, and fire department. And so, that was kind of fleeting. And then the more we kind of moved into it, Rory had asked if I would be part of the COVID-19 Student Emergency Fund for the Brooklyn campus. And reading the stories of these students, many of them who are international students who were stuck here, who needed very, very basic things. I don't know that I ever personally had that many people that I was somehow connected to that were in crisis at any one given time. So I think a lot of that was a challenge. And what I learned, I think that this whole time of COVID, we've all been George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life. If you remember, George Bailey had these great dreams for himself, and that he wanted to travel and what he wanted to study and what he wanted to be. And to know that so many young people were not experiencing those milestones in their life and the graduations. And then, of course, those too who were working on the front lines day in and day out, the sense of despair that I think a lot of us had as the days turned into weeks. And so I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if we each had our own Clarence in those moments of despair to say, take a deep breath. Right now, you do feel out of control. You wonder about what life is all about. But look at your past, whether it's 15 years, 30 years, 80 years. Look at what you've done through this crisis. To see that people have really stepped up to the plate and given of themselves. And yes, it was the frontline workers. And I think I came to a realization, I never thought of the people who brought our food from sea to shining sea, or the people who stacked our shelves in the supermarket. I never really looked at them as heroes, and yet they were the ones that were out every day, making sure the rest of us had what it is that we needed. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Sister Suzanne.
Thank you. So one of my biggest challenges was to see how I could meet the needs of the people that were struggling in so many varied ways, especially the students who I was working with on a daily basis. Even among them and still now, COVID illness, death in their family has pervaded really the lives of so many, not just the students, but particularly for them. And the challenge to offer comfort and support in a virtual way. You know, I was used to having students with my open door policy being with me and to try and know what's going on with them and then be present to them. So many lost their jobs. The increased anxiety level that we're still seeing among so many of our students. And the other piece was the awareness, which had begun really a year ago, of the increasing food insecurity. So long before pandemic hit, and now it was just amplified even more. So as Rory mentioned earlier, we were really happy that we were finally, after a year's worth of work, able to get the Long Island Food Pantry open just around Thanksgiving time. And, you know, it really has brought some assistance and hopefully some relief a little bit for some of the students. Some of the other challenges have been the awareness of, in a global way, the struggles throughout the world and how much you feel helpless in that bigger picture because of so many limitations that we have. Separation from family and friends have certainly been a challenge. I come from a very large family with events going on, new babies coming along, people in the hospital, and you can't do any of that. But like many of you, Zoom has become our new best friend. And you know, we also make efforts to connect that way. The restrictions on visiting people in the hospitals, restrictions on visiting the nursing home, even our own Maria Regina has been difficult. And the major adjustment personally for teaching and the academic advising process, which I oversee, and to go, as Sister Marian said earlier, we were in the midst of getting ready for advising. And so to come up with an entirely virtual process that would still meet the needs of the continuing students, which in a way was a little bit easier, at least we knew who they were, but then to reach out to the 300 plus transfer students and 400 plus freshmen on the Long Island campus that we had coming in and figure out how we could make it personal to them, keep up that sense of welcome that we always want. And thank goodness for the skilled and generous people that we have that could work with us from the technological side to say, here's what we need to have happen and how do we do it? And it worked. I've learned an awful lot from this. I've learned certainly the fragility of life, the importance of relationships and listening to people. I've learned very much, which is not something I like very much, but the need for flexibility and adaptability. Finding new ways and methods and realizing, you know, you can change and it is okay. And there are other ways to do things as well. It's always being ready for the unexpected because every day is a new day. And you never, just when I think I've got it all figured out, something else comes up and it's a new plan and a new approach and a new idea. I think also to recognize the needs of people vary and how people have responded to this whole situation is so different, and to really try and be present and meet the people where they're at. It's been a gift for me to really hear the stories Marie mentioned earlier about the COVID Emergency Fund, and I've been privileged to work with the committee on the Long Island campus, and like Marie, reading the stories of people, you know, and I think, wow, okay, I was complaining about, you know, whatever it was I might have been complaining about, and then I'm reading the struggles that they have and the hardships that they're going through and the heartaches that people have. And, you know, it's really been a privilege in that small way, and thanks to the generosity of many of you who are alum on this panel presentation tonight, that have really lightened the burden. I mean, it's thanks to you and your thoughtfulness that really allowed us to be able to, and continue to be able to help people. We're still getting requests for people. We're, you know, up into the almost 300 at this point. So it's been a real gift to be part of that.
Okay, thank you, Sister Suzanne. On to our next question. What do you do to find peace at this time? Do you have recommendations for others on how to find their own peace? Let's start with Sister Mary Ann.
Okay. In our tradition as Sisters of St. Joseph, we are described poetically as having eyes open, ears attentive, and spirit alert. These words came to my mind as I think about what I do to find peace and create peaceful places. When I'm walking in nature, I keep my eyes open in wonder, my ears attentive to what may be invisible to my eyes, and my spirit alert to all the signs and blessings of kinship surrounding me. When I cannot be outdoors, there are other ways of being drawn into stillness, focusing on a beautiful painting or a cherished photograph, listening to calming music, breathing rhythmically, savoring a poem or a reflection, or just writing a letter. In other words, I try to be quietly present in whatever time that I have in the midst of a busy evening or a day. In a limited way, gardening has helped nurture a peaceful spirit within me. During the spring and summer months, I was responsible for weeding a small patch of native plants in our CSJ garden. And I found that exercise to be so restorative. Prayer is centering for me, and times of prayer alone or in community anchor me, and they keep me open. It keeps me open to the needs of the world. I have a particular translation of the Psalms for praying, which invites a peaceful pause. In the evening, I have a practice of reviewing the day, and in particular, writing down who and what I'm grateful for. And often this practice nourishes my hope for the next day. As you know, spiritual nourishment comes to us in many forms, and each form is unique to us. I am aware of the increase in online offerings, spiritual offerings, to accompany us in this time. The Sisters of St. Joseph website offers daily reflections and actions. Among them, for this time, is a reflection on praying the Lord's Prayer during the COVID crisis, written by Sister Maria Pascuzzi, CSJ, a St. Joseph's College alumna. I hope that this helps you to find your own ways of bringing you peace.
Thank you, Sister Mary Ann. Sister Marie. You need to unmute yourself.
Like Sister Mary Ann, I think the first thing that came to my mind was music. And right now, being in the Christmas season, I really love Christmas music because it connects me to God's incarnation, and that God is Emmanuel. God wants to be with us. Something else that I didn't expect would be giving me great peace. My nephew entered the Coast Guard in September, and of course they take away their phones. And we had to wait like for about 2.5 or 3 weeks before we got the first letter from him to know to write to him. And I began writing him a letter every day. So I wrote 33 letters to my 18-year-old nephew. And I have not written, we're into technology now, so everything is an email. And yes, you write Christmas cards or a little thank you note, but I cannot tell you the last time I really, with a marker in my hand, wrote a letter. And what I found flowing out of me were stories of the family. And like each day, I started on October 1st. And so I said, today's the feast day of St. Therese of Lisieux. And I talked about the little way and how doing some very insignificant things can make a world of difference. And October 2nd was the anniversary of Grandma's surgery back in 2006. And, talked about, never meeting his grandfathers and how I never met my grandfathers either. And this went on. And like I said, it was almost like a muse, and how much peace it brought to me. Now he has a cell phone back and we've texted, but I think, and he's stationed now, in South Carolina, but I think that's a practice that I'd like to take up. And again, some of our students in the honors concentration are pen paling with Sisters of St. Joseph in Brentwood. And I have gotten such positive feedback from the students. And then the students that are writing are telling their friends, oh, my friend is writing to a Sister Mary Powell, and she lived in Immaculate Conception Convent. But when I was giving the instructions to the students, I said, I don't know if they've ever written a letter before. So I even put in the instructions, stamps are 50 cents, So I think letter writing is a way to find peace. I also think, we're called to be the congregation of the great love of God. And I think that relationship that we have, we talk about the dear neighbor, and the dear neighbor is not necessarily the house next door that you're going to ask for a cup of milk. It's whoever is in front of you or next to you. So that could be on the train, that could be in your office. And I think entering relationships with people, I have found great peace and joy when I'm stuck in traffic at a construction site on Atlantic Avenue or the Jackie Robinson, and to roll down the window and to yell at the men and say, "You're doing a great job." And I give a thumbs up and I say, "Thank you very much for all your hard work." And I had one man turn around, we were stuck in traffic, and he talked to me all about the process of pouring the concrete. And so it was giving him joy that I interacted with him. And so I think there are very simple ways to bring personal peace to ourselves as well as others. And I think that sense that we're all in this together helps connect us and support us in this human condition. Thank you.
Thank you. Sister Helen.
Well, I think for me, the real source of my peace is my faith. And I think in my head, I know that God is in this turmoil with us. God is always in the mix. A little hard to find at times, especially with all of the challenges we had. But a practice that I really did every day, and I've just found it so just so encouraging, is that I just take a look at the scripture of the day. And you've read these scriptures all of your life, but what was revealed each day really paralleled a lot of what was going on. So that in the spring, you had all of the Lenten readings, where Jesus was trying to tell his disciples of the impending suffering and crucifixion, and they didn't get it. And I kept saying, I'm not getting this either. I just found in reading these same things that were very familiar to me, they were speaking to me of this time, and that God was part of this whole mess, accompanying us. And you got to Easter, and it was so different to celebrate any of these holidays that we're still looking at now. But there's Easter, there's hope, there's spring, there's new life. And I think that also I found peace at that time because we were beginning to connect more, as Marianne said, with Zoom. My family was Zooming as a congregation. We were trying to have meetings and social gatherings. So that sense of connection and that people were still there in a very different way was really something that did give me a great deal of peace. The weather got nice. I got outdoors. And just being outdoors and really noticing, especially in spring, you see all this dead wood with little buds of life on it. Those parallels, those were hopeful signs. They happen every year. It's the the death, the new life, and that comes from that you saw in nature. And it gave us a little breathing room. But, even in the midst of all of that, the impending sense this was going to spike again, we didn't have a vaccine. So you had that same rhythm, of kind of the fear, the anxiety, but then renewing that hope. I think I would really recommend to you, just pick up a scripture reading, because we have no idea how God really speaks to us, because that is a means. It's a quiet time. It's not our own thoughts. It's something else that kind of nourishes us. And I would certainly encourage us all to go outside. Maybe not tomorrow, from what I'm hearing. So you might want to hold off until after the blizzard, or the fizzle blizzard, as we may see. And I think in the same ways, that sense of peace when you connect with other people, even as Marie were saying, you meet someone. We're now back in offices. You hear what people are doing. You hear what they're doing with their children, struggling with, half of the family is in school, half of the family is not in school. You realize that everybody in some way or other is managing, and when you connect with them, it's an encouragement of one another. So I found those things really hopeful, and gave me a sense of calm.
Thank you, Sister Helen. So now we move on to our next question and that is, what are you drawing on to give you hope and strength in 2021? Let's start with Sister Suzanne.
Thank you. I'm going to put a little bit of the peacetime in there as well. I'll blend the two. So I think what I'm drawing on is definitely the gift of people in my life, my family, my friends, the congregation. All of that really enriches me and encourages me and provides hope for me. Being outside, being near the water is always a place that can give me hope. I think watching the ocean and the amazement of, like, it's always there and it recedes, but it comes back, and it recedes and it comes back. Life goes on, even when we can't imagine how. And I think, just really being present to each other is going to be the way. I've been overwhelmed, I think, and has given me great hope with the generosity and creativity of people. We see a lot of news reports. Channel 7 usually ends the World News Report with an uplifting story. And every day I said, I wish most of the news could be that part of it instead of all the horror. But to just even really appreciate and pay attention to the simple joys or the simple things that happen, because there's so much goodness. And because this time that we're in is so challenging, we can easily, myself included, get caught up in the struggle, the horror, the frustration of being separated. But where in the day is there something that was uplifting? A word that somebody spoke, a gesture that somebody made, the generosity that I keep witnessing all the time, a success that we might have ourselves in something that we did. So I think there's, and I see it lived out at St. Joseph's College in so many ways, with the faculty, the staff, and the students who have gone above and beyond in this transitioning time to really meet the needs to the best of their ability. One of the ways that I get hope is I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and now a lot of grands who are all ages, and they're just so innocent and wonderful, and I'm just Zooming with them can make me laugh with the different things they do, or a video that my niece or nephew will post of some crazy or silly thing that they've done, or the cookies that they tried to bake for me, and the shapes that they didn't come out to be. But it's those kinds of things that really just provide that hope and give that laughter. And I would have to say the production of the vaccine and the fact that it's here and starting to be administered has really given me a great sense of hope. And, I think we have some really brilliant and trustworthy people that are continuing to research and continuing to find ways that are going to make this world a better place for all of us. So many good things to be grateful for. God is the center of it all. And if I can keep my focus in God and on God, then even in the midst of these challenging times, there's always hope and courage. And I hope that you can find that as well.
Thank you, Sister Suzanne. Sister Marie. You need to unmute.
One of the things, the stories I remember is one that Mr. Rogers talked about when he was a young boy, and he would be afraid of certain things, and he would ask his mother, and share with her his concerns. And she said to him, "Look for the helpers." And I think one of the things that gives me hope that in the midst of COVID, when we had the shooting of the death of George Floyd, and to see, as painful as it was for the protests, that people stood up and said, we cannot tolerate this anymore. We need to change. And I think COVID has made us look at unjust systems that exist in our society. We're starting to look at the way we look at one another, whether it's people of color, whether it's the LGBTQ community. And I think what I have seen is helpers. People are standing up to the plate to do what has to be done. And like the prophets of old, this morning I was listening to Reverend Winnie, I think her last name is Varghese, from Trinity Parish in Manhattan. And she talked about, at this time of Advent, we kind of like, those stories and the preparation and, Jesus as the little baby. But that if you look throughout history and biblically, God breaks through in the violence too. And I think what we're seeing is God breaking through. And this is cyclic in the scriptures where, the people have fallen away from God and are sort of really screwing up. And then they get to a point of desperation of saying, we can't do this. I can't do this. And they turn back to God. And then things start to improve until somewhere down the road, they start to deteriorate again. And so I see like that there's a cycle now that we're in where a strong wave of people across our country and across the globe are saying, we need to be one humanity. We need to consider the earth as part of something that we ought to take care of. This week in particular is the week of joy in the Advent calendar. And this was also known, that the pink candle was known as the shepherd's candle, for the joy that comes with Jesus's arrival. And so I think in addition to hope, that biblical definition of joy, that joy cannot, first of all, joy is not just some kind of giddy happiness. Joy is deep down knowing that God is with us and that nothing can deter, not even the present circumstances, from God breaking through. And I think, like Mary, she said yes to an unknown future. And I think we too, at this time, have to say yes to one another. And I think there is a groundswell of people saying yes to one another, yes to their neighbors, yes to making change so that we can, as a country and as a people, live up to the best of our humanity. So that just gives me tremendous hope.
Thank you, Sister Marie. Sister Helen.
Well, I think, for me, it's the inherent goodness in so many people. We see that people working to meet the needs of others. There is a real sense of community. Sad to say, we experience this most often after tragic events. Superstorm Sandy, 9/11, here we are again. But I think that we are really also at a point of recognizing some of the things that have really torn us apart. The sense of individualism and entitlement, self-sufficiency that has really grown so strong in our culture. And I believe if we really pay attention to keeping on building that sense of community, that when this is over, we could be different. The extremes that we see in wealth and poverty, the isms of race and gender, religion, all of those things that really divide us. Those are not the places that really allow us to be the human beings that we were created to be. We are social beings. We are not isolates. And actually, one of the worst parts of this whole thing is that isolation. People are feeling that, and we don't need to remain that way. I also think that, when we say we can be different, we can go back to that sense of really taking care of one another. And I don't think it's an impossibility. I think we look at everything that has happened, the people that we have known, the experiences that we've had, where people literally went and helped and responded to needs unconditionally, did not look at who the person was, where the person came from. And we see that ongoing as we're still facing this. I don't think we can ignore that experience right now. And we can't return to the way things were, going back into our own little spaces and protecting our own little privileges. I think this, especially as Marie was mentioning, some of the racial tensions are really saying no more. We cannot be this way anymore. I think we have experienced being different, and we have to seriously look at what have we learned about being different. We really are better because of the way we have been. And I think because we were different during all of this, the hope is the sense that we could be different. And I think it depends. We were taught at St. Joseph's College, one of the pillars is leadership. I think we all have a role in this. And many, obviously, we're hearing what's even happening at the college right now, taking those initiatives to reach out and provide for. Those are not simple acts. Those are huge acts that I do feel give me hope that this can actually change how we have been. So Christmas is coming.
Thank you, Sister Helen. Sister Marianne.
Well, in response to this question, I thought about 3 experiences that I've had recently. And while they're local ones, I believe that they point to the desires and the efforts that are at work in our nation and in our world to dispel divisions and to foster inclusion. So the first experience was in November, and it was at the college. And I attended a workshop entitled Identity Exploration and Storytelling. It was a wonderful workshop. And it was sponsored by, for the College-Wide Diversity and Inclusion Week. It's as a step in our process to create a more inclusive campus. And in the coming year, there's going to be a book club established. And we're going to be reading the book Americana, which is a story of race, identity, and immigration. And so this gives me great hope that we are gathering as a campus community to grow our social imaginations. And we're going to do it, as I said, together as a community. My second example is from the Sisters of St. Joseph, again in November. November was a busy month for meetings, but I gathered with members of our community to discuss the data from a survey conducted by the Leadership Conference of Women Religious. We considered the future of religious life in light of the findings, which include the number and age of vowed members and the decreasing numbers of those entering religious life. This information did not stun us or dismay us. We looked at what is and what is coming by way of our relationships and our partnering opportunities with those who share the mission and the charism and are already working toward the flourishing of reconciliation and peace and unity and oneness. So the hope of religious life, the shape of religious life in the future, is in the hands of all who are partnering with us. My third example is from my local neighborhood. And that is on Thanksgiving Eve in our local newspaper, there was published a game called the Gratitude Game. And it was a series of conversation prompts to incite conversation about lessons learned this year. So for example, one of the prompts was name 3 things that brought you closer to family and friends this year. Another one was, what new tradition would you like to establish? And the third was, an act of kindness this year that I am grateful for is. So we tried a round of it at our dining room table. And we were just kind of awed at the listening, the sharing, and the community spirit that those questions prompted. Several days later, I noticed that someone wrote a thank you note to the editor. So I was aware that people did try this and appreciated it. So what gives me hope here is the quality of the conversations that we are having and which we want to have with one another. We're experiencing the fragility of life in these uncertain times. And I think we're emerging with a new consciousness of who we are to one another, who we want to be for one another, and what we want for our world. So I hope these lessons of my hope stir yours as well.
Thank you so much, Sister Marianne. So now we have time for an additional question. So this question comes in, and that is, what should we never forget about this year? What do we need to take with us throughout our lives? Sister Helen.
Well, I think what we really have to take from this is that we are able to get through this, and how we are able to get through this. I think it's kind of a thread that's going through many of the responses that we've made tonight, is that we get through it with one another, and we get through it by encouraging, by being realistic. We named the challenges, the difficulties we had, and yes, there's been tremendous losses, there's been deaths, there's been real compromises and real struggles that people are still living through. But I think it's a matter of being able to live through them, certainly with a sense of faith and with a sense that we cannot do this alone. I think that would be my thoughts.
Thank you, Sister Helen. Sister Marianne.
The phrase that just popped into my head was amazing grace. And I think that we have probably been sources of amazing grace to each other, and hopefully can cite examples in our own lives and in the lives of others where grace has helped us take every step that we needed to take. And we've never been abandoned, that grace does not abandon us. God's grace is always with us.
Thank you, Sister Marianne. Sister Suzanne.
I would say the resilience that we have that sometimes we don't even realize we have, and allowing others to walk the journey with us. I think, especially as Americans, we sometimes think we have to do it alone, or that we should do it alone, and that's what makes us look stronger or better leaders or more secure. And in reality, it's the strength of walking together, always with the vision of God's journey for us, that I think makes all the difference and really is what empowered most of us, I think, to be able to move forward and to continue to move forward into an unknown future. Because each day, whether it's COVID or not, it's always unknown to us. So to trust and to be with each other, and that saying that goes, don't walk behind me, don't walk in front of me, walk by my side. And together, I think we can move through anything.
Thank you, Sister Suzanne. Sister Marie.
I think what wells up inside of me are the number of times that Jesus in the New Testament talks about the power of love. And again, connecting with the congregation, we're called to be the great congregation of the love of God, and our charism of love, unity, and reconciliation. And, I know for me, one of the hardest things is when Jesus says, love your enemies, pray for your persecutors. I try, but I can't say I'm always very successful. But I think what I have seen is never underestimate the power of love to transform even the most dire set of circumstances. Love is a transformative power, and we need to surrender to it, and we need to engage one another with the power of love.
Thank you, Sister Marie. Thank you for all the sisters and their wisdom this evening. It's been really an enlightening and insightful evening. I'd like to turn to Sister Mary Ann for a closing prayer.
Creator God, you became flesh and dwelt among us, giving us hope. Ever present, you continue to reveal yourself as hope in the midst of our lives, in the beauty of all creation, in every dear neighbor we meet, in the words we hear, in the love we share, in the example we give. Widen the horizons of our hope as we have paused this evening. Come into the uncertainty and challenge which surround our days and nights. Bless us and our loved ones with strength and wisdom. Accompany us in the tender hope we bear to the world. And to this we say, Amen.
Thank you, Sister Mary Ann Cashin. That was perfect and beautiful. In this season of giving, the college does have 3 very impactful crowdfunding projects. One has to do with our food pantries, which you've heard about a little bit tonight. We also have a scholarship for the Brooklyn campus, and we're also raising funds for Hope House students that attend the St. Joseph's campus in Patchogue. We're going to share a link if you'd like to give. We'd appreciate your consideration in doing that. Now, one more time, I'd like to thank all of the sisters for your insight and your words to help us get to 2021. We're excited for that. And we also have, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. We know taking an hour out of your evening during a very busy Advent season is not easy to do. So we want to thank you for that. Please stay safe and healthy. And now we leave you with some inspirational thoughts on 2020 submitted to us by some of our viewers from the Office of Institutional Advancement and Alumni Engagement. And on behalf of St. Joseph's College, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, wishing you and your family a very healthy and happy 2021.